Right, this is easy. I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. This one is all about the balance of payments, which we all know is also the same thing as the current account at AS, and it's also the same thing as a trade balance. So whenever they say any of those words, you know it's pretty much the same stuff. But according to the exam board, the definition for it, a current account on the balance of payments consists of four things: trading goods, trading services, investment income, and transfers. Now, if it's a minus, that means we're importing more than we're exporting, because it's bad for our trade balance. So, going through this question, according to this, we've got minus 60, but then we've got plus 40 on investment income, and minus 10 for transfers. So that actually equals, minus 60 minus 10 is minus 70, plus 40 it ends up being minus 30. So that's what our trade balance is at the minute, minus 30. It says that the current account is in deficit by minus 50. What must have trading services been? So trading services, if that's minus 30, it must have been another minus 20 billion, which would equal minus 50 billion. So its answer is B. This is one which I will actually cry in the exam if you can't do, because you know that monetary policy can be basically three things. It can be a change in interest rates, which is like the base rate. It can also be to do with the money supply, and then finally it can also be to do with the exchange rate. If it's not any of those three things, it's not going to be to do with monetary policy. Now, a government aiming to increase aggregate demand, so we've got to pick one of these which will increase aggregate demand. So we know it can't be D, because D is to do with fiscal policy, so it can't be that. Now the next three would all make sense for being monetary policy, but which one's going to increase aggregate demand? Right, if they increase the rate of interest, that would actually make aggregate demand go down, so that's wrong. If they increase the exchange rate, what do we write next to it? We write spiced, which would mean exports would be dear, so again that would reduce aggregate demand, so that'd be bad. But if they increase the amount of money in circulation, everyone's going to have more money, so therefore there'll be more aggregate demand, so the answer is C. Okay, this question is about exchange rates. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do to make my life easier, I'm going to cut out all of the things being equal, because it means nothing. Then I go, which one of the following would be most likely to occur given a fall in a country's exchange rate? As soon as I hear fall in the exchange rate, I write WIDEC, because weak pound, imports become dear, exports become cheap, and that should help me through. Okay, so what would we expect to happen to imports? Imports should go down. And what would happen to exports? Exports, if they're cheap, then there should be an increase in the amount of exports. Okay, so well, this first one makes sense. A, lower exports. No, because exports are cheap, so we know that makes absolutely no sense, because exports really should be going up. Is there another one with lower exports? No. So, B, could it be that? Higher exports. So we know that bit's right, because there will be higher exports, because exports are cheap. Then it says then higher imports. Is that right? No, because imports are dear. So, that's wrong. Next one, higher exports. That's right. And higher aggregate demand. Now, aggregate demand will go up, because if exports are cheap, that's going to affect our C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So there'll be more exports, so that will increase aggregate demand. So you know part C is right. Just to check, just to make sure we're right, part D, we've got lower imports. That's true. There will be lower imports. And lower aggregate demand. That's wrong. Aggregate demand will go up. So the answer's got to be C. With this question, as long as you know monetary policy, this is a really easy question. But again, if you don't know your definition of monetary policy, it's not going to be very easy for you. Remember, monetary policy can be to do with the base rate. Can't spell base. There we are. Base rate. It also could be to do with money supply. And finally, it can be to do with the exchange rate. So they're the three parts of monetary policy. As we know, one sec. Exchange rate. As we know, at AS, of the three, you really care about the base rate, but you have to remember these as part of your definition. So which one of the following combinations involves only the use of monetary policy? So I'm going to go through these ones. Right, lower taxes and more government spending. That's definitely wrong, because that's to do with fiscal policy. Lower interest rates and a budget deficit. That bit's fine, because interest rates is fine, but a budget deficit, again, that's to do with fiscal policy. That's wrong. A reduction in the exchange rate, that's good. And a cut in the tax on firms' profits, That's wrong, because that's again to do with fiscal policy. And finally, low interest rates, tick, and a reduction in the exchange rate, tick again, because they're both to do with monetary policy. So the answer is D. Right, this is a very similar question to the previous one, but this time it's talking about fiscal policy. Now you know fiscal policy is FISI, G&T. Fiscal policy is government spending plus taxation. But also we can kind of say it's also to do with borrowing. Now the UK are in so much debt, but what's that? I can't spell borrowing. Borrowing. There we are, good. So, which ones of these are to do with fiscal policy? The rate of interest. Now we know that's wrong because that's monetary policy. The next one, the amount of money in circulation. Again, we know that's monetary policy, that's wrong. And then C, tax and government spending. That's definitely right. Now just to say, part D, I almost thought, oh no, this is one. But part D, it's not talking about the balance of a budget. It's talking about the balance of payments. So that is to do with trade balance. And obviously, that's got nothing to do with the question. They're just trying to confuse people who might have got confused with the budget balance and the trade balance. Right, number 21 is another WIDEC question. So it's an easy one as long as you write WIDEC. So to start off with, it's talking about a fall in the value of the pound. So that means we write WIDEC straight away to make life easy on ourselves. Because it's going to be a weak pound, imports dear, exports cheap. Right, so car manufacturing in the UK, making use of raw materials and components imported from Germany. Are we more likely to be buying raw materials from Germany in this example? If you look at this, imports are dear, so actually we're actually not going to buy imports from Germany because they'll be too expensive. So we'll cross that out, that doesn't make any sense. Right, are consumers in the UK going to benefit who regularly buy cheese imported from France? Now I always get confused with this one. But think about it, if our currency has got weaker, can we afford to buy imports from France? No, because it's going to be expensive, so that's stupid. I don't get confused at all. I don't know why I said that, to be honest. Okay, next one. C. Producers of UK wine who compete in the UK market with Italian wine. Are they going to be happy? Yes, they are going to be happy because with exports cheap, their wine is going to be able to compete with Italian wine. So we're going to put C is definitely right. And then finally, are Spanish fishermen who supply their fish to wholesalers in the UK, are they going to be happy? No, because imports are dear. So if you look at that question, it is actually quite easy. The answer is C. Right, we're at question number 22. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm pretty bored now, Mr. Robinson. Your voice has annoyed me. I don't want to hear you anymore. But what I would do if I were you is I would either go away for a little bit, have a little break, then come back, or just push on for the final 3 questions, right? Now this is actually, bizarrely, I think it looks quite easy, but I could see why some of you might find it hard to understand what the question's actually asking. It says, in which one of the following combinations, A, B, C or D, is the Bank of England most likely to increase interest rates to try and reduce inflation? So basically, they're talking about why would they ever want to try and reduce inflation? In which of these 4 situations is there likely to be inflation? That's basically what the question is. It's just kind of a weird way of saying it. So, is there likely to be inflation when money wages are rising? I'd say definitely. If money wages are going up, then that means people have more money, so there's more likely to be demand pull inflation. So the answer can only be at the minute C or A. So we get rid of B and we get rid of D. Next one. If the exchange rate is rising, what do we do straight away next to this to make it easy on ourselves? If the exchange rate is rising, we'd write spiced. Now, is that likely to cause inflation if the exchange rate is rising? There's 2 reasons why it won't. One, if imports are cheap, we could get cheap raw materials, so that would reduce cost push inflation. And secondly, if exports are dear, then our goods are expensive, so it will actually reduce aggregate demand because there'll be less of our goods being bought. So we know that's got to be wrong. And then basically, at this moment, we already know C's right, but we always do the third one just in case. Consumer spending. If we're expecting there to be inflation, you'd expect consumer spending to be rising. So it could be this one or this one. But the only one which has got all 3 right is C. So that's the answer. Okay, you have to read this question quite a lot to make sure you know what you're talking about with this one. What it's saying is the government want to stimulate economic growth. So they want to get some sort of economic growth. But they don't want to increase their budget deficit, so they don't want to spend anything. So the first thing is, got to be spending 0. And secondly, they don't want to cause inflation in the short run. So they can't do any AD policies, because AD policies will cause inflation in the short run. Yes, they'll work in the long run because of the accelerator effect, but in the short run, they won't work. So these two policies we can't do. So first of all, reducing the bank rate of interest, we know that is a AD policy. It will make AD go up, which will actually cause inflation in the short run, so it can't be that. Secondly, cutting the basic rate of income tax. The good thing about this one is it won't cost the government any money, but it will cause inflation in the short run because again, it is a AD policy. So now we've got the last two policies. Both of these are supply side policies. So both of them don't cause inflation in the short run. So they're both okay on that side. So they'll be good on this side. The problem is, what do they need to do? They need to not spend anything. They could increase government spending on education and training. That would increase economic growth, but the problem is it would be expensive, so that's off. Deregulating industries and relaxing big building regulations. That wouldn't cost very much compared to education and training, so that's the answer. By the way, as well, actually, I was just thinking about it. D, if you ever think about your long answer question on are supply side policies any good, the problem with supply side policies normally are they're quite expensive, and the government haven't got any money. So this could be an R but to your R but. You could say the government could go for supply side policies that are quite cheap, such as deregulating industries and relaxing building regs. So that's potentially a good thing that you could actually go for in your long answer question. Okay, we're on number 24. It's quite a wordy one. So it's asking about two things. It's saying, first of all, the country's got a slow rate of growth of productivity. So productivity might be growing, but at a slow rate. And secondly, it's got rising cyclical unemployment. We know with cyclical unemployment, this is when AD is low. Okay, it's got all other things being equal. We're going to cross that out because it's rubbish. Which measures are most likely to increase the rate of growth of productivity and reduce cyclical unemployment? So we need measures that both make workers more productive, but also reduce cyclical unemployment. So it's really easy. It's one of those ones where you tick them as they go along. So increased investment, that will mean that workers become more productive. That's good. And increased savings. The problem is, if people are saving what they're not doing, they're not spending. So that would make AD go down, which would always cause cyclical unemployment. So that's wrong. Next one. More government spending on training. That's good. That would make workers more productive. And then it says in a higher exchange rate. Whenever you see that, you write spice, strong pound, imports cheap, exports dear. The problem with that is, with exports being dear, that would actually mean AD would go down because people won't be buying our goods and exports are part of AD. Right, next one. So that's wrong. Right, C, decreased payments, benefit payments. Now, would that make people more productive? I think you could argue that it would, maybe. Could you? Because if there's less benefit payments, they're more likely to want to work. I'm going to say potential. I'm not sure. And then a lower budget deficit. Now, the thing is, if we're in a lower budget deficit, what does that mean that happens to the country? This is one which I always get confused with. I don't know why. A lower budget deficit means that, say, for example, we might be in a deficit of... I might, as a person, be in deficit by £5,000. If I'm now in debt by £4,000 because I've lowered my budget deficit, what must have I done? I must have spent less. And if I spent less money, that means it would actually cause AD to go down. So it can't be that one either. That's wrong. Half of it was right, the other half's wrong. Right, finally, lower taxation on businesses. That makes sense. If lower taxes on businesses, they're more likely to want to produce stuff, so they'll be more productive. And finally, lower interest rates. That would make AD go up. So that will solve both these problems. So that is the answer, D. Okay, here we are. We made it to the last one. I think a lot of you got this one right, to be honest. So I'm assuming you've already pressed stop. So I'm just going to chat on my own, to be honest. Right, really easy question. We know cost push inflation is shown by a shift in the short run aggregate supply because it's a change in the firm's cost of production. So already we know this can't be right because that's to do with AD. Secondly, this one can't be right because it's to do with long run aggregate supply. So it can only be C or D. And it's got to be the one where price level goes up. And as you can see with part D, That was the price level at first, and now it's gone up to this price level. So the price level's gone up. That's cost push inflation. So the answer is D.